Hey everyone, it's Ivan, KidBadge.com, out here for, of course, Loadout from the high angle rifle training Heart class down at Thunder Ranch. Before I jump into the guns, I will show you some other stuff that honestly usually gets overlooked, but is arguably just as important. And yes, when I went down for that Heart class, I brought Peanut, because pretty much comes with me everywhere. All right, watch out, buddy. So something often overlooked or as an afterthought is clothing. And it's one of those where if you go to take a shooting course, it's expensive. Between tuition, ammo, travel, lodging, like time away, like all those things definitely add up. And if you show up ill prepared with respect to clothing, to where you're cold and wet, and someone's trying to give you wing calls, and your reticle's doing this, you're wasting a bunch of money and kind of everyone's time at that point. So plan appropriately. I will say Thunder Ranch down by Lakeview, Oregon, high desert mountains, basically 50-50 chance of rain and snow every day. Like, that's how I take it. So with that, I always bring stuff for everything. And then I'll also look at the weather and be like, what's probably going to happen? So there was a chance of rain for part of the time there. Temperatures in like mid to high 20s in the morning. Afternoons probably around 55 or so. So I was like, okay, I want something that will be waterproof. So I ended up bringing these. Peanut, come here. And I also actually brought some like snow boots, because it can just as easily snow there as before, but I ended up wearing these. These are the Lems Outlanders. They're not really insulated, but they are waterproof, and they did a great job for me. While it only ended up raining on the last day, they did good for me and everything else, to include hiking up kind of some mountains, because high angle rifle training. And yeah, I was really pleased with these kind of across the board. And which will work bottom up. And so socks, changed my socks, changed my underwear, showered every day, but all the rest of my clothes pretty much wore the entire time. Socks, usually some sort of Merino, whether 0.6 or something like that. And there'll be links to all this stuff down below too. But here, go on. No more loves for a minute. So even though I was wearing, well, yeah, every day rather, change my underwear, but I also wear these, which are long underwear, and these are by Sitka. They're their lightest layer, I think 110 Merino base layer. And so they are light, which was nice because kind of that balance, again, it wasn't really cold, but they kept me warm. And when we get into the pants, there was a way to basically mechanically vent if I got too hot, hiking up the mountain and stuff like that. Which brings us to pants. These right here, I think they're the Testa L5 Softshell by Beyond. And I don't like them day to day, but they're my favorite like backcountry pant, just because they work really well. And they're pretty warm. They're kind of like this brushed fleece on the inside, which is really nice and comfortable. And then all the pockets are this mesh, and they're all zippered, which generally I don't like zippered pockets. I will say on this trip, this one actually the zipper gave up on my right front pocket, which half the time I left it down anyway, so it is what it is. But what's nice about these is if you're afraid of losing stuff, you can zip them up. More importantly though, the inside of the pockets is this really loose, soft mesh also. So when you unzip all the pockets, both thigh pockets, hand pockets, and then back pockets, you can mechanically vent. So gave me a way to mechanically vent, going from hiking up a mountain, starting to sweat a little bit, to laying down prone behind a gun for the next like half an hour or whatever. So being able to just help regulate temperature, which is important. And to that end also, this right here, which is the Sitka, I think it's their 220 Merino long sleeve, quarter, half zip, whatever it is. And so, yeah, a little heavier than those long underwear. And again, I wore this every day. Zips down in the front, which is nice to mechanically vent. And you have some thumb holes so you don't lose your sleeves when you put some layer on. But yeah, I would just hike up in this. starting off a little bit cool, and it did great for me. When it actually got cold, I'd pull out some other layer, throw that on, and it did great. Again, wore it all 4 days, which brings us to kind of outer layers. I would, depending on what we were doing. So first 2 days are on like square range, pretty much drive up there. And then the next 2 days you're hiking up to these different ridges and shooting down from them. So for most of the time, I was actually wearing this right here by Prometheus Design Works. It is their Stratus down hoodie. Reviewed it before, they just came out with a new version of it. They basically batch it. And so this one, largely all the same stuff. I think one of the main differences is you have these pockets, which are really great. You can throw electronics in there so the cold doesn't kill them. Put gloves in there, just stash pockets. So I have this, which if I was wearing it on the range, it did a good job for me. Also treated with DWR, so I think day 3 it sprinkled a little bit. I was wearing this, no issues. And what was nice about this is it's compressible. So on day 3 and 4, when we're hiking up the mountain, this would be inside my pack, compress it down because I don't need it to hike up. But when I got there, if I needed it, I could easily pull it out. And then one of the other layers I ended up using actually, because I didn't need as much insulation as that down, was this right here, which is, I want to say it is their Paladin Hoodie, again by Prometheus Design Works. And it's kind of a marriage of a soft shell, almost hard shell with some insulation. It's pretty cool. Basically, I want to say it's tweed, like 4-way stretch, treated with DWR and everything, and then a little bit of insulation through it, and a lot of like good usable pockets, things like that. I've yet to review it, but this did good for me when I used it as well. And then the last day, when it was definitely supposed to rain, I was like, okay. So I had this inside my pack, again, starting with just that long sleeve merino. And then I also had these, which are by Outdoor Research. Don't remember if I reviewed them or not. They're basically just waterproof Gore-Tex pants. And the legs zip all the way up, so you don't have to take boots off or anything like that. You can just throw them on, zip the legs back down, and you're good to go. And then also, first time I actually ever used it, was still in the package. I got up there and it was about to start raining, pulled it out of the plastic so that I could then, I only brought my one Pelican case, but I brought 2 cameras. So I ended up wrapping my other camera in the plastic this came in. Worked out well. But also by Prometheus Design Works. I don't know if this is actually released yet. This is their Aegis Hoodie. And so it is, or Aegis Shell. It's a hoodie and it's a shell, waterproof, breathable, pit zips, all the technical features. And yeah, this did a great job for me as well. I threw it on actually, because it wasn't super warm at the time, over this down hoodie and the Stratus down hoodie. And yeah, it did awesome. Kept me nice, warm and dry. And then lastly, this, which I'm not going to take off because it's not very warm out right now, is the AG Watch Cap. And I love these. They're great. Also by Prometheus Design Works. One, it makes it really easy to help regulate temperature. So we're sitting around the cars waiting to step off in the morning. It's like maybe 30 degrees. Have this on. As soon as we start moving and I start to warm up, I pull it off, shove it in my pocket. Then when we get up there, start to cool off a little bit, throw it back on. Again, just help regulate body temperature.
There's a hit again. Nice job.
Moving on to some other gear. Some things I used, didn't use a ton, is spotting scope. I think this is the Oscar 8, I want to say, by Sig. Pretty sure I have reviewed it before. Nice clean glass. And I used it mainly on day 1 when we were basically confirming zeros at, I think, 1, 2, and maybe 300 yards, like on paper. Just because you only get so much out of the optic. This goes up to like, I don't know, 25 to like 55 or something. So yeah, used it, did well. Excuse me, buddy. And on that, or on top of this, this is by Field Optics Research. I forget the model number exactly. This tripod though, and you can lock the legs out depending how far you want to mount to include all the way out pretty sure I've already reviewed this, but this was nice. I actually had a spotting scope on it on day 1, and then day 2, I was like, okay, cool. I spent like a little over a day and a quarter shooting prone off bipod. Let's do something else. And so started shooting off of this, basically seated, and then finished the day shooting off of it standing. I will say, like, the higher you get from the ground, the more difficult it is. But yeah, like, I was there to learn and have fun. And it can definitely be challenging depending on how small or how far the target is. But yeah, I really enjoy shooting off of tripods, and yeah, did it a bunch on day 2, and then also finishing out day 4, did some more shooting off this, mainly just sitting. But yeah, tripod did good for me. Other things I used. Actually used this, oh yeah, in a Thermarest Z-Fold, basically used as a shooting mat for a while. And then also ended up using this. This is the Kilo by Sawtooth Rifles. It's a shooting bag. You can also sit on it, pretty versatile. You can also just like bunch it up, shoot off of it, or use it as a rear bag. So I messed around using it as a shooting bag, sometimes under my arm, and sometimes honestly just sitting on it because it's pretty comfortable as well. Other things, Lucas gun oil. So I ended up shooting 2 guns. I'll get more into that. But when I went to shoot my scar, I went to go zero my scar, confirm 0, I was like, man, this is really, really sluggish. Someone should probably clean this gun. I don't think I'd ever cleaned it. So I actually just pulled the bolt out, or whole bolt carrier, I guess. Just wiped it down, threw some lube on it, called it good, because not into cleaning guns. Sorry, not sorry. As far as eye pro goes, used, well, I wear prescription lenses, so used a couple different ones, well, 2 different ones to be exact. The first, I guess, 3 days, I was using this new one right here by Revision, and it's pretty cool the way they have actually been able to, because I have one of their older like lens inserts, and they work, but they're also lens inserts. And so these, crazy enough, they're able to actually get my prescription into, and they're built into them, which was actually really nice. But these being like tinted, which again worked fine the first 3 days, knowing it was probably going to rain and not be very pretty on that last day, day 4, I ended up opting to bring these guys, which is by Smith Director Elite. These just happen to have ballistic prescription lenses by Zeiss in them, and yeah, probably my favorite like fitting glasses that I really like. And Ear Pro. So you want to be able to hear range commands. You also don't want to have just things smashing into, namely the frame of your glasses, all day long, like over-ear hearing protection, which if you have good gel cups, doesn't really matter. If you don't, it sucks. So I use these, Otto Engineering. These are the Noizebarrier Micros. They did good, comfortable all day. I will say I changed out these tips. I forget the name of these tips. Again, links down below, you can check all that stuff out. But yeah, these actually did great for me. Just comfortable, could hear everything, got rid of loud noises. Because man, guy right next to me, good guy, but he had a muzzle brake, which I was like, why, man? I get it. He doesn't have a can yet. Hopefully he'll get one. Some other cool things, this ranging card. Used it a little bit, and it is by Sobchek Security LLC. Sobchek? Sobchek. It's in Walter Sobchek from The Big Lebowski. But on the back here, basically gives you a bunch of very common things, how big they are in inches, and then how to mill them, like the formula at the bottom. And then over here on the back, it gives you all of those same things, and then distances, and then approximately how big it is in mils. So at one point we were milling, I think it was it was one of these IPSC targets. And so here it says, okay, well, if it's 500 yards, it's going to show as 1.7 mils. So can quickly mill it in your reticle and get a pretty good estimate, which is actually really handy. As I mentioned before, Hart class high angle rifle training, hike up, shooting down from a mountain on day 3 and 4. So with that, needed to carry things. I ended up using this pack right here by Prometheus Design Works. I'm spacing on the name right now. And the way I had it set up, basically running 2 cameras, one closer camera and one kind of a further camera. So with that, I had 2 tripods. One the camera's sitting on now, the other one's in my vehicle. But basically I would stuff them down either side, carry those there. And then inside this, one of the nice things is this pack will be zipped up like this. And when you open it, you can either dig in or you can just unzip the whole thing and get access to everything. So while there is a pouch up top, I kept, what did I keep in here? Oh yeah, kept my rangefinder. I believe this is the Kilo5K by Sig. Honestly, didn't really use it much in the class. There wasn't a lot of like ranging. You were either given the range or you needed to figure out the range using your reticle and things like that. So didn't really use it. And then a Daka Pouch. Inside here, kept still some hand warmers, and then also a little battery bank for if I need to recharge camera batteries. And then, oh yeah, pretty much all the shooting. If I was supported in some way, I used this bag right here by Cole-Tac. It did a good job. Basically, again, just different ways to get elevation. Either throwing the rear of the stock here, turning it, throwing it here, kind of wedging it different places, or depending on how we were shooting, I'd throw this up like onto rocks and throw the gun on it, which was more secure than just throwing the gun on another hard surface. This allowed it to kind of burrow in and yeah, get pretty stable. Other things in my pack, already went over warming layers, Stratus down jacket, as well as those different rain layers. And then, oh, I have a bunch of loose coffee in here. That's handy. Not really, but it's nice to have warm, hot coffee, or hot coffee, I guess. And so I had to bring water. One, I had an Nalgene bottle, and then I would also bring this, which is by Keith Titanium, and it is a titanium canteen. And inside here is a canteen cup, as well as a lid for the canteen cup. So I would use this to actually boil water. Had my little titanium cup right here for my coffee, and then it's always good to share. So I brought these. These are actually the cups out of the Stanley Adventure cook set, which kind of always lives in my car. So I pulled those out, threw them in. And here's some coffee. The rest is inside my backpack, apparently. This is just, you can basically get the instant Starbucks coffee or any coffee for that matter. This just happens to be Starbucks. They're blonde, they're light roast. And I would suggest not putting that in a backpack. Apparently the lid can come off pretty easy. So there's a bunch of loose coffee in here. Of course, I needed to actually get that water boiling. So I got this right here, which uses these guys. It's propane canisters, mixed fuel, like, yeah, isobutane and propane. And this stove, haven't reviewed it yet, but been meaning to get one because I got a knockoff. I got 2 knockoffs. They both basically died on me. And so this is the Kovea Spider. And big picture, it's a canister stove, but you can remote the canister, and the way it loops through the burner, you can use it in much colder temperatures. Does that matter for most people? Absolutely not. But if you get down to below freezing, and we're talking like down into like teens or single digits or negative, these canisters don't work very well, especially with anything that sits on top, like jet boil, all that stuff, it starts to fail. So this allows you to basically take those much lower in temperature, and it's still super easy and convenient. Or you can actually get an adapter and use like 1 pound propane tanks, which lets you get even colder with it if you really want to be out there that cold. And that, I think, is kind of all of that stuff. Now we'll get into guns. I said guns, plural. We'll get into that in a minute. But most of the shooting I did through basically the first 3 days was with this right here. Pretty cool. This is my MiniFix. It has been in a lot of different configurations. 300 blackout, 5.56, 6.8 SPC, and finally I got one of 10 prototype bolts from Q for 6mm arc. And then through Tag Firearms, I got this Proof Research 16-inch barrel, 6mm arc, and I guess starting at the front, half Nelson, direct thread suppressor, Q Kickstand Bipod, and then over here, this is a U-loop from Blue Force Gear, Sling, Sierra Tac padded sling coming down. This right here, Arca adapter, so I could again shoot off that tripod. Right here, this is made by Sawtooth Rifles. And then lightweight mount from Arca Optics. And then this Leupold VX5 HD 3-15, second focal plane with 0-stop, exposed turrets, mill reticle, and prototype, I believe, iron palm grip from Die Free Company. And yeah, this is what I shot those first 3 days. It was awesome. I had never really shot 6 arc, and so it was fun getting to put a bunch of rounds through this and spend time with it. I will say something that holds true for like any gun, to include this. Keep in mind, like this gun right here, like configured as it is, it's like 9 pounds, which is really light. And you're like, oh, my gun only weighs 6 pounds. Yeah, until you throw an optic, a bipod, a sling, like suppressor, all these other things, and then yeah, it's probably like 12 pounds, something like that. And something I will say that holds true for this gun also is it's not easy to shoot light guns. People get behind like a fix for the first time and they're like, man, this thing doesn't shoot very good. And you're like, oh yeah, do you shoot better behind your 24-pound gun, not that 6-pound gun? And light guns will basically amplify any issues you have shooting, whereas a really heavy gun will largely like mask any inadequacies in the shooter. And so this was able to do everything I asked it to do, but man, definitely had to earn it. It was a lot of fun though. I had a great time. Bipod worked great, especially just up in the mountains, kind of different unconventional positions. And yeah, no, I was really pleased. I will say, remember I mentioned that one of 10 prototype bolts? Busted a bolt lug, like one of the lugs. So I was shooting, having a blast, and I got to this one position. I'd actually taken the sling off, wrapped it around a tree, was loading it, shooting standing down at, I don't know, 500 yards, something like that. And after that first round, which was not a hit, unfortunately, I went to go like run them, and I'm like, what is happening here? Stopped, diagnosed, and a piece, like literally a piece of, or a whole lug rather, had broken off, which was a bummer. But again, I don't remember if those were 3D printed or what. They were like a quick batch of prototypes to check fitment and stuff like that largely. And so yeah, ended up busting my bolt on this. Right up to that point though, probably like 600 rounds through it. Thing did awesome, enjoyed it, but time to switch guns. Important thing to remember, always bring a spare to include guns. And yeah, as a quick aside, was I expecting that bolt to break? No, not really. Was it on my radar? Like, not necessarily, but yes, at the same time. Like, I'm in the business of creating content on all kinds of different things, which means I spend time with things to include things that are like brand new, not released. And so with that, like, yeah, I've had a lot of things break, which is why I pretty much always bring spares. And so yeah, it was a bummer. I wish I could have shot the entire course with it, but I didn't. But fortunately, I brought a whole extra gun. So this right here is my Scar 20S 6.5 Creedmoor. And I guess starting at the front, Jumbo Shrimp by Q. It's their titanium hunting suppressor, 6.5. Really nice, doesn't add a ton of length or much weight, and at the same time, pretty decently quiet. Right here is the Magpul Bipod, M-Lock, of course, regular scar. They're like, you know what you need in your life? More Picatinny rail. I'm like, no, I don't. So these guys right here, both this bottom rail as well as the two side rails are M-Lock, thanks to Parker Mountain Machine, which allows me to mount that as well as down here. This is a M-Lock Arca adapter by Sawtooth Rifles. So did some time with this gun, shooting off a tripod as well. Moving back, worn mount, and then this is the Primary Arms SLX 3-18 by 50, first focal plane. Pretty good, especially for the money. And I will say, didn't quite figure out the zero stop before I came, so after I confirmed, I at least got it to where I'm like, okay, cool, like I have -4 mils of travel, and then I'm good to go. But have that on there, and then up front, these are pretty handy. This is by 100 Concepts. They basically make them for light caps as well as scope caps. Flip them off and they stay put. And then back here, pop that guy, also by Sobchek Security. This little sticker you can put inside there. They make a couple different ones. Put all your dope in there, really handy and easy. And oh yeah, Scarbrader in here, which is the adjustable gas block. Like, I don't know, 13 different settings, whatever it is. And this thing runs amazing, really nice to shoot with that adjustable gas block. Doesn't beat itself to death. Sling over here, which was important. Carrying this thing up a mountain. This one is the lead slinger by Tactical Distributors, and then front and back, some of these U-loops by Blue Force Gear. How did this gun do? It did great. Like, I had a ton of fun shooting it. As far as ammo, real quick also, the 6 Arc, I was shooting Hornady, mostly Hornady Black, as well as some of their match. And then this right here is, I think, 140 grain soft point by S&B. Did a good job for me, did everything I asked. Once we got back to, I think like 15 or 1300, something past 1200. I mean, one, limitations of me as a shooter, coupled with they're having a hard time spotting. Like, they'd see the trace, be going perfect. We wouldn't see a splash. And so eventually I'm like, okay, well, if we can't see impacts to correct off of, like, we'll call it. But all the shooting I did do with it, mainly throughout that day 4, from up on the mountain, also back down to Brown Range on the flat range, thing did awesome. With all that said, how did all of these things do for me? Honestly, I mean, aside from bolt breaking, everything did great. I had a blast shooting this gun. Again, it definitely made me earn it as far as getting good hits at distance. Like, lightweight gun, not easy to shoot, but yeah, I'm liking 6 Arc so far. Need to get a new bolt so I can continue shooting this gun. Everything else, glad I brought a spare gun. That did a great job for me too. Peanut did good the entire time. And no, all my layers and everything, they worked perfectly. It was one of those where could have been a lot colder, where if it was warmer, it didn't really matter. Like, I had the appropriate stuff. Also just had some t-shirts. And if it was colder, I actually had like level 7 pants as well as jacket and like snow boots. So pretty much all the bases covered. Pack did a good job for me. I will say could have used more space, but that's the nature of it for me anyway. In that usually have a giant pack because carrying at least a camera, tripod, like all of those things, it did good, especially if I didn't have a bunch of camera gear, like it would have been perfect. Yeah, kind of across the board, really pleased with everything. But as I mentioned before, there'll be links down below. You can check all this stuff out if you want. And yeah, as always, thanks for joining us at kitbadger.com. Look forward to seeing you next time.